Anthony Weaver hypes up the media during his Friday press conference. Some inspiration from Thursday Night Football. Lots more here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today on the show, a little bit of a Friday free-for-all. I got some thoughts from the Seattle-Arizona game last night, applying them to the Dolphins. I have Anthony Weaver, several statements that'll get your engine running as far as solutions and what needs to be different, and some no excuses attitude that I really appreciate, especially when it's contrasted to some of the other player comments, not just Tua Tagovailoa, but including Tua Tagovailoa throughout the course of this week across the NFL. And then a few college football games that I'm glued to. We have another weekend, Saturday, Sunday stack with no Dolphins football. We have to wait till Monday night. So if I'm waiting all day for Monday night football, that means I'm waiting all weekend. So what am I watching for this weekend as we start to look for solutions on the outside? And obviously you got a lot of games left to play. It's too early to dive into all that, but wanted to throw a few thoughts in here at the end of a Friday show. It's kind of a bonus buffer before we get the game day and the game plan to beat the Jets, which will be on Monday. So Anthony Weaver, several comments throughout the course of his press conference that catch your attention and obviously caught the attention of the guys on the beat. I got a text message from somebody and they're saying, dude, he's yelling today. He is fired up. But the first thing that I really appreciate from Anthony Weaver is he was asked, this is from Barry Jackson. Dolphins defense coordinator Anthony Weaver doesn't answer directly when asked if he ever expressed concern to Chris Grier, the general manager, in April, May, June, July, that they didn't have enough talent on the defense he was given. The quote is, "My job is to cook the dinner." Thank you. And that goes, this is not just a Miami thing. There's been several player press conference teams struggling, battling, and it includes the Dolphins with Mike McDaniel early in the season and Tua Tagovailoa with what he was asked about with throwing interceptions and his pay rate, and Cam Newton and the back and forth there, which if you didn't get caught up on that, I'll touch on that in just a second. At the end of the day, you got a job, and your job is to produce results with what you have. I appreciate somebody saying it doesn't matter what hand I was dealt. It doesn't matter if I had enough or I don't have enough. It doesn't matter if I got my way. It doesn't matter if I had my input. I just need to push the right buttons and figure out what needs to be done to create the product on the field, whether that's a player or coach. None of the extra fluff, none of the extra but, none of the extra you on your couch eating chips, none of the extra anybody can hold a clicker, none of the fans are spoiled. Kyle Hamilton with the Ravens. Ravens 1 and 2. They're 31st in points allowed and 32nd in yards allowed defensively through 3 weeks. Now, they played Detroit and they played Buffalo, but Josh Allen passed for almost 300 yards in the fourth quarter, and the Lions ran for like 250 yards on Monday Night Football. It's a rough start for Baltimore. And fans in Baltimore, and this is the luxuries of doing what I do with A to Z Sports, I'm up to speed with what's happening around the league, and I write about it, right? Fans are pretty ticked off, and rightfully so, right? The standard is the standard, and I think we as Dolphins fans, we want the team's standard to raise. The standard in Baltimore is high already. And Kyle Hamilton's quote was effectively something to the lines of, I think in some ways he was asked about Zach Orr and who's the defensive coordinator, and his thoughts. And he said, in some ways, I think Baltimore fans are a little spoiled with all the success that we've had. You lose a couple of games and the world is ending and the sky's falling. And then he goes on to say, it comes down to the players on the field and doing their execution and being better. And then the coach and the same side, the same press availability. But when the coach talks, says, I need to do a better job of putting the players in position to be successful. The player says, coach puts us in positions to be successful. We need to be better with their execution on it. Sometimes that's all it has to be, right? Without the extra but or getting that dig in. And I understand it's human nature. They hear the noise. I'm a part of the big cog and machine that creates noise. I understand that. But it was so refreshing for Anthony Weaver to say, it doesn't matter. Now, is that a ringing endorsement on, on what Anthony Weaver was given to work with this year with the secondary? No. I think we all kind of looked and knew, and we were all waiting for those veteran signings to come, whether it's Rasul Douglas or Jack Jones. And sure enough, they both came. But one came the last week in July, and the other one came the last weekend in August. And the turnaround is that they're your starting corners, right? So the question being April, May, June, neither of those guys were here. All you had was these young guys and Artie Burns, and Burns goes down, I think, the first day of training camp. Kohu's down the first Saturday of training camp. It's tough. So I appreciated Anthony Weaver saying, my job is to get this unit to perform, period. And then when he was asked what needs to be different, at some point it comes down to violence. We want the offense to feel like we're playing with 12 or 13. I need you to do more than your job. I need you to whip that guy's expletive. So, in one hand, and somebody pointed this out on social, the players say we need to just do our assignment and trust our guys. Anthony Weaver says, I need you to do more than just your assignment. I need you to whip that guy's butt. I read that. I don't take those as two conflicting things, because it is within your assignment, dominate the assignment. Don't do your assignment, dominate your assignment. Right? And whether or not you do that down in, down out across 60 minutes, or you're physically capable of doing that to players across from you, is a different conversation. Right? And that won't always be the case. There's going to be guys that are more talented than you. But the strain and the effort and the intensity are the things that you can control. And I do think on tape sometimes, there's an explosive given up and the body language isn't great. And I think it was the broadcast. It was Herb Street on Thursday night last week for week 3. It was like, look, man, like these guys aren't dapping each other up after they make plays. A lot of new. It feels new. Okay. So for Anthony Weaver's standpoint, I appreciate the tone, the message, the simplification of your assignment. I need you to crush it. I need you to crush your assignment. And there's no excuses for me. These guys are going to go out and perform or they're not. Doesn't matter what I was given, what I wanted, what I got. I need to make it perform. Especially in contrast to what you hear in a lot of other spots. And not just in Miami. Not just in Mike in week 1 saying, well, the players let the process of getting ready for the game become bigger than the game and they weren't ready to play and we need to be better about that. None of that. Now, I did have some inspiration from last night's Thursday night football game with Seattle, who has a connection to Mike McDaniel. And I did want to touch on the Tua Cam Newton stuff. We'll get into that stuff next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make your neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar, coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are all places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. It's almost a weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players deliver. when it matters most. This week's choice is one of those players from last night's Thursday night football game showcase, wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was quiet in the first half, 2 rushing yards, I believe, but ends up making the big catch to flip the field when they were backed up, makes another big catch on the eventual game-winning drive after they got set up on a short field with the kickoff, landed outside the landing zone. JSN made the big plays, and his chemistry with Sam Darnold is vibing right now. And just like JSN delivered for the Seahawks, DoorDash delivers for your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You can save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Promo period through November 18th. So the Tua Cam Newton stuff. Cam went on First Take and talked about Tua and referenced who he's making more money than, and said, I'm not pocket watching, but, and then proceeded to say he wasn't pocket watching and added context of Tua's performance relative to his peers at the quarterback position, and effectively said something along the lines of, I like quiet Tua. I like chip on your shoulder Tua. I don't like loud Tua, talking about want to see who's coming in to watch film. That's really the part of the Cam Newton part of this that I took exception to. You want to point out what a guy's financial status is, to use to his own words against him when he signed that contract. Heavy as the crown, right? It comes with expectations. With more money, Cam said, more money comes not more problems, but more expectations. I think that's fair to invoke, especially with what the performance and inconsistency has been like through the first 3 weeks of 2025, when the roster transitions kind of started to take in place, and you're banking on Tua being a player that raises the tides for all ships on the roster. But this is a team that has very clearly needed the leaders on the roster to step up. So I don't take any exception with Tua putting out the public open challenge to make sure that his teammates continue to stay motivated with their process on a week over week basis so that they can be better. I don't take any exception to that. And I think it is very clear that this team needed that. So I disagree with that part of it from Cam. As far as Tua, and I don't expect Tua to have known exactly what Cam Newton said, but he was asked, I believe it was by, I don't remember who asked the question, but Tua said something along the lines of he said, Cam's doing his thing, but anybody could sit back with a clicker and anybody can play quarterback in the NFL, I guess. And that's the part of it with Tua's stuff that I take exception to as well, where you just kind of wish you'd say, hey, you know what? Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I know what my standard is. And he had already said earlier in the presser, I have not played to my own standard. Go back to that line. Say it again. Be boring. Just regurgitate the same line. You could say whatever you want behind closed doors, but when you're up in front of the podium and you got the microphone in front of your face and it's on a live stream on YouTube and you know everybody's going to clip whatever you say, and as soon as you start throwing out passive-aggressive stuff, especially at 0-3, when you haven't played to your own standard, it's like, I don't know, just give me the cookie-cutter response and let's move on. Would be, I think, the best way to handle. I don't want to say it wasn't like a gotcha, but it was a legitimate question of like, do you feel like the criticism you face has been amplified now because of your contract? Was the question really that he was asked. I digress. I want to get to Seattle. And more specifically, I want to get to Seattle Seahawks offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, who is obviously related to Gary Kubiak, who was a part of the early chapters of Mike McDaniel's coaching experience and formative years. And I walked away from this game last night envious of what Seattle has and how they're using their pieces to do a lot of the things that we perceive Miami based off the system that they run and the Kubiak had a stop with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. Those elements exist in the offense. And it's a team that plays dirty on early downs. Now, they'll do play action on early downs, but man, there is a cognitive effort to run the ball. There is a cognitive effort to play heavy and go with 12 personnel. They've added a fullback. So it looked a lot like, oh, okay, here's a Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan tree style offense with Sam Darnold at quarterback. They ran the ball 35 times. They passed the ball 26 times. Now, they were leading, and they were leading comfortably throughout this game. So, game script is a piece of this puzzle. But they have a tight end in A.J. Barner and then a rookie tight end who's a flex big-bodied player in Elijah Arroyo. They've got physical receivers like the Jake Bobos of the world. They've got a twitched-up dynamic route runner who can get down the field in JSN, Jackson Smith-Njigba, we mentioned already. They've got powerful runners with a powerful presence in Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. And they have opportunities where they're trying to run the ball, right? And they got their big body guys out there where maybe it's Cooper Kupp and it's Jake Bobo or the wide receivers. And they got the fullback out there with A.J. Barner and Kenneth Walker in the backfield. And it's a lot of things that when you looked at what Miami's personnel moves were and what they were intended to be, it felt like, okay, they're trending that direction. But Clint Kubiak with kind of this fresh slate, and they moved on from DK Metcalf. They moved on from Tyler Lockett. They made a change at quarterback to kind of go with a different timeline and match instead of having a pre-existing quarterback in Geno Smith. And I'm not saying that that's relevant to the Dolphins per se, but I think about Ollie Gordon relative to these big backs and Walker and Charbonnet. And their guards, they drafted Gray Zabel in the first round, but there are other two interior offensive line spots I don't think are any more standard than Miami. They got Abe Lucas and Charles Cross at tackles, so they're sturdy at one interior spot and two of the tackles, and the other two interior spots are kind of like question mark, right? Kind of similar composition for like what the Dolphins have at their disposal on the offensive line. But man, I love the way that they mixed personnel. They were, and Dan Orlovsky's been hammering this. I know Dan Orlovsky just had a spot on Drive Time with Travis Wingfield that I was also on for a spot for the Friday show for Travis. And his big thing the last 2 weeks has been like offense under center, right? You need to run more of your offense from under center because of how defenses are playing offenses in the league. And then when you go in the gun versus the pistol, and the Dolphins have been a high pistol variance team the last 2 years, you're kind of cutting down on your menu of what you can present from a run game perspective out of the shotgun. And then everybody's landmarks are different from a pass rushing perspective, and the timing gets different. And the ways that you could lie to defenses is optimized when you get up under center. We've seen some of it in the first 3 weeks from Miami. I would love to see more of it. But I'm envious of like the A.J. Barner, Elijah Arroyo, big-bodied wide receiver, and then JSN with a physical back in the backfield. And I think that's with the weapons that the Dolphins have, if you can find the right balance of game situation and week-to-week kind of game planning, I'd love to see if we can mirror some of that. Because they scored 23 points. They very easily could have scored a lot more. It felt like Seattle took their foot off the gas in the last 10 minutes. And then Arizona had kind of two frantic drives to tie the game up. The Cardinals needed an 8-play, 73-yard touchdown drive and a 12-play, 57-yard touchdown drive. Those were their two fourth-quarter possessions. I mean, they had 6 points and next to no, they were in like the 110-yard range midway through the third quarter. That defense was flying around. So game scripts, again, are a piece of that puzzle. But it's not all of it. There's how you use what you have, and especially in neutral situations. That a similar offense off another branch of the same roots of the tree, I see some pieces that maybe you can do some of that, and I'd love to see what that looks like for Miami. And maybe that can start this week against the GD Jets, as they're known in these parts. The college football games I'm glued to on Saturday. We're going to get into those next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IAHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat, all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You could feel the craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. The college football games I'm glued to, and we got into this a little bit on Drive Time, but if I had a TV, one TV, what am I watching? And I'm one of those goofy guys. Like I can't do red zone. I can't process. Like I need to be in the flow of a game to enjoy a game. But tonight it would be TCU versus Arizona State. There's some top talent on Arizona State with wide receiver Jordyn Tyson, Sam Leavitt at quarterback, Josh Hoover for TCU on the other side. There's some interesting play at hand that kicks off at 9 p.m. on Fox. But Jordyn Tyson's kind of the main event player, especially with Miami and their passing game. You project into 2026, and if Tyreek Hill is here or not, and depending on where you draft, maybe the blue chip trench players are all gone. Maybe you only have one quarterback that you really like, and he's all gone. Maybe your prime edge rushers are gone and Caleb Downs is gone. Maybe you get on a hot streak and you're picking in the middle of the round, and maybe wide receivers falls a little bit. Jordyn Tyson, there's a world and realm, depending on where you end up picking, in which, and I don't want to be presumptive of where that is, whether that's at 1 or 5 or 10 or 15 or 20, right? I'll give every, I think, feasible, not going to the Super Bowl ends of the spectrum here, and anywhere in there, right? Jordyn Tyson, kind of main event for me on Friday night. The noon games on Saturday, September 27th. The game I have my eye on in the noon block is Notre Dame versus Arkansas. Arkansas has a quarterback, Taylon Green. They are, of course, known for their bruising play up front. They got a lot of big-bodied maulers, but Taylon Green's a high tools quarterback. He's got 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions thus far in 2025. So he's an interesting player against one of the best defensive tests. Now, Notre Dame's defense has not played well this season, but they lost a dozen guys to the NFL draft last year. So that would be the game that I have on TV at noon, and watching and enjoying like a blue blood program like Notre Dame. They have a lot of young players who didn't play last year because those players all left for the draft. Kind of let those guys declare themselves to me throughout the course of that game. The 3:30 kick is probably, we're going to be responsible here, LSU and Ole Miss. I think you have to go with LSU just because of how loaded that team is with NFL draft talent as well this year, where they've got Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback. They've got Harold Perkins, looks like he's recaptured some of his edges, like a hybrid defensive player and kind of like a Willie Gay type player, but like maybe a supercharged Willie Gay. As far as a guy who can rush off the edge, he can play off the ball. He's like a big time spy pursuit guy and has killer closing range in that regard. Think him against a spread offense like Ole Miss is going to charge him with covering a lot of grass. Eager to see how he handles that. Mansour Delane, a corner, should absolutely be on Miami's radar as far as a guy with not the most explosive speed, but man, he's got deluxe ball skills and he's a physical player. Looks like he's taken a big step this year. So those guys against Ole Miss, who is another team who saw a lot of guys transition out. They obviously had the exodus with Jackson Dart. A bunch of their wide receivers left. If I was going to shout somebody out at Ole Miss, it's probably Patrick Kudus at guard is a name that I'm interested in just because I think he transferred from Arkansas. Dolphins need depth, right? The offensive line, maybe we're seeing Andrew Meyer potentially come back after starting as an IR designated to return player. And Liam Eichenberg, Mike McDaniel said, is dealing with a chronic issue, so it's going to be a while for him, the right side of the line. Like, we just need depth on the offensive line. So that Ole Miss versus LSU game, it's in Ole Miss. It's a good road test for Garrett Nussmeier as well, so I'm dialed in on that one. We've got the Penn State-Oregon whiteout game. I talked about this on Drive Time with Travis, but you got heavyweight quarterbacks on both sides with Dante Moore, who's a redshirt sophomore. You got Drew Aller on Penn State side. Penn State brought in a bunch of transfer wide receivers that are all draft-eligible guys. Pena's probably my favorite. Oregon has a transfer at offensive tackle, and was it Battle? Isaiah Battle, I believe, who is a freakish player. Kenyon Sadiq, their tight end, is everything the Dolphins have been looking for in a tight end from a receiving and blocking profile, all in the same skill set. It's just kind of like cruel irony. Like, they've had all this time to wait on it. And maybe Tyler Warren was that last year, but I understand going meat and potatoes, even, as tempting as a guy who catches the ball and can move around and do all the things that Tyler Warren can do. It's very early in both those guys' careers. I know the timeline is down on Kenneth Grant right now, but we're willing to see that one out, right? So that's the 7:00 game. And if I make it past that point, it's house money because we've got the early slate with the Ireland game for Sunday as well with the NFL. So lots of great games to watch and get into, kind of giving you guys an idea if you want to engage with me on Substack or Twitter or wherever else you want to know where my eyes are at this weekend on Saturday. Now you know. Cobb Crabs, you guys can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I will be back again on Monday, getting you guys ready for the pathway to beat the New York Jets. And then we will have the post-game squad show with Grease and Jeff Zuniga live after the game for an hour. And then I'll have my own post-game show after that. So lots of content coming your way between now and week 4 kick against the Jets. Keep it locked in right here, Locked On Dolphins. I'll talk to y'all again soon.